Unless you want to do contract negotiations with him. But he wants to film it. Mr. Lynn, my dear friend, he's had a good time this morning talking. He's taught with 3 classes already. You're the 4th, so be gentle. But he's open to questions. If he says something you need to ask a question about, you can. If you want to know something more than the direction we're headed in. He wants to tell you about his experiences, and I don't want anybody talking when they're not supposed to be talking. 6th grade and 5th grade went in one room together and behaved very well, and y'all are older than they are, so you can do better. Right? Right. So, let's give an ear, listen to what Mr. Lynn has to say, and learn a bit about his experiences from D-Day into Durban.
How long?
We'll be finished here at 11:15.
Oh.
You only have about 40 minutes.
Oh my, that's enough. I can go all the way to World War II and Vietnam.
Oh, good.
I am very honored to be in your presence. I was young one time. In the month of January in the year of 1943, I was inducted into the Army from the volunteer state of Tennessee. Went in at Chattanooga. They classified it, give us our code. You should have saw some of them. All those things had stickers all over them. And you see those guys walking around, pulling off this sticker, and pulling off this sticker, and pulling off this sticker. Oh, it was really funny. You know, that was some humor. When you went through the line, you lined up to get your clothes. Okay, what size shoe you wear? I wear 10.5. Pick your shoes up to 12. Hey, this is size 12. That's all right, you'll grow into it. And your pants always too long. Well, you can take them up. Well, it was. I mean, it was a rush. It was a mess. But we shipped out to California, San Luis Obispo, California. Beautiful country. Oh man, it was great. Back then, there was no one living in California. I mean, the orange groves, the mountains, cruising along. You could look up, and there would be a snow-covered peak. You would be in the desert, but there in your distance would be a snow-covered peak. The weather was balmy, and just leaving Chattanooga, it was cold and drizzling. But we got out there and boy, you rolled your sleeves up. Hey, soldier, roll that sleeve down. Button that button. I am your sergeant. You will call me Sergeant Joe Brown, sir. I am your mother. I am your father. If you need anything, call me. You will not smile. You will not laugh. You will not do anything but stand here and look straight ahead. And he walks down that line and get right in your face. And you could see the little iron things flying out of his eyes. You stand at you. Oh boy, I wish I was home, Mom. But it was fun. It was fun in California. We didn't do anything. Because, you know, when you first go in the Army, I had walked on my life. But these drugstore cowboys, oh yeah, you're not familiar with that, but anyhow, these kids, streets, you know, New York, Brooklyn, they weren't used to the Army life and all the rigors. Well, small potatoes to me. But they were all chow hounds. No, they weren't all of them. Most of them were nice. But you know what a chow hound is? If you don't, it's the fellow that gets in the line early every morning after assembly, after roll call, to get to the mess hall. Get what's on the table. You got a quart of milk at this table, you got a bowl of syrup at this table. By the time you got in and got sat down, that was all gone. Well, where our little mess sergeant was from Chicago, and he was a little Polish guy. He said, well, fellas, if you're all going to eat like hogs, then I'll feed you like hogs. At that time, we were eating with china plates, forks and knives. So, hey, let's discontinue that. Bring your mess gear. Go walk past and I'll give you. If you're going to be like a hog, I'm going to treat you like a hog. He said, when you come in here, I want you to stand at that table and everybody will sit at the same time. And we will say, pass this, and we will say, pass that. Well, that didn't last long either. Because chow hounds, you just don't do anything with chow hounds. This is something bred into them. We had one chow hound. Back in the early days, we wore leggings. They were made out of canvas, and they come to about right there, and you had to lace them up. And they had these little metal clips on them, you know, and you laced them up and laced them up.
It looked like the top of a boot, didn't they? Looked kind of like the top of a boot.
It was. We went to boots.
Yeah.
But this one guy, he was going to be first in line regardless. So when we assembled for roll call, he put his mess gear inside his jacket. Well, this day he came charging out, and he had put his legging on backwards, and they were laced up on the inside. And just as he got to the lineup, they got tangled up, and he sprawled right in front of everyone and landed on his mess gear. Oh! Well, that ended that little charade too. But that was fun. That was fun. I got something to eat. But things they grew progressively worse. I mean, it got interesting. When we first went out, all right, you guys, line up. Hut, 2, 3, 4. Well, everybody was hutting and 2 and 3 and 4, and at the wrong time, you know, they're bumping into each other. And they say, about face, this fellow would go that way, and this fellow would go this way. And the tour officer was doing drill. He yelled at us till he got hoarse. But they lined up the regimental band, and they put that band out on the street. And you talking about making a difference. When that fellow lifted that baton, and did that baton like that, and that regimental band, da 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 da. Oh boy, you could see everybody straighten up and get that step right. And I loved it. I loved it. We moved from California to Camp Rucker, Alabama. Anybody know Camp Rucker? Down about 75 miles south of here. My brother, which had went into the service in June, before I went in January, was training at Fort Rucker. When we got to Fort Rucker, we pushed those guys out in the field. They didn't like that much. They didn't enjoy that at all. We were sitting in their barracks, and they was out in the swamp. But anyhow, we got together and enjoyed each other's presence for a couple of days. We trained, and it was tough. It was tough in Fort Rucker. I mean, it was a den of rattlesnakes. Those jeeps would come out of those swamps and they'd be rattlers tied to the back of them that long. In fact, I stepped over one day. I was trained to be a scout. First scout. You go way out in front of the company. Well, I was fine during the peacetime. I mean, during training, I was fine. I didn't have to put up with those guys. I was out there by myself having a big time. But later on, they promoted me to sergeant. We moved to Tennessee. We did all our winter training in Tennessee. Moved out to North Carolina and got ready to ship overseas. When we left Fort Rucker, we knew that the Pacific Theater was out. My brother went to the Pacific Theater. We went into mountain training in Elkins, West Virginia. Yeah, Italy. Italy was the main thing. Just before they got to our outfit, they canceled it. Well, that did away with Italy. We set sail for England in one of the largest convoys up to that time. When we boarded in New York, and I had never seen such a ship. I mean, it pulled up, where they had it pulled up, you couldn't see the bottom or the top of it. Line that outfit up, Lynn. March up that gangplank, Joe. But that was a nice trip. It took us 14 days. That was a large, large convoy. Ship of every description, all loaded. Every day at a certain time, this fellow would come out with his instrument and he'd shoot the sun. Not with a gun. That's what they call shooting the sun. They had called it sextant.
Yeah.
By that, they could pinpoint their location on that expanse of water that you couldn't see the end of any way you looked. I never did understand how anyone could do that and say where they were. How far are we from land this way and how far? I thought we were closer to land that way than there was any other way. 14 days, we arrived in Liverpool, England. Boarded the train, we weren't allowed to speak. You didn't stop, you didn't speak. But those people were so appreciative of us. They met us, and God bless you, we love you. But we unloaded all of our oranges and all of our apples and all of our goodies on the children. The next morning we had crossed. Gone. Behind us. We were on the coast of England. That's how large England was. We set sail from Plymouth, England, on an English boat. We came over on a German boat. We set sail from Plymouth towards France on an English boat. And got off of that boat. Onto it, yes.
If you were like with America and stuff, fighting on America's side, how come we all came over on a German ship?
German
We've been
ship
captured.
was a reparations thing after World War I. They captured it, and they gave it to us, they bought it. Anyway, it was pressed into service. It was a giant ship. We were on the, what they call the flagship, where all the command were. And we had a lovely trip. But we got,
If this will help some.
right, we got to France shortly, very shortly. We went ashore on Omaha Beach. That evening, it was the evening when we got there, really.
That would have been,
But
you went across like this, right?
right. That evening, we stopped and had a sandwich, and we walked up to the front. That's how far. So that was a very, very difficult place during the whole invasion. The rest of the beach flat, and they, some of them walked as far as 10 miles before they even met anything. But they were waiting at Omaha. They were there in force at Omaha, and it was a miracle of God that they all didn't get killed. We lost thousands of men. Equipment, the bay, the beach was covered with equipment, floating bodies, destroyed ships. Well, they left the ship. They left the ship, period, for a purpose, for a breakwater. And they needed it the next day because they had a terrible storm the next day. But the next morning, we was in the line. This is your objective. This is your objective. This is Paris. We came ashore right in here. We went about this far. That's about all the progress that is made. We took this position here. The Germans had a salient that nobody could move. And they gave that to us. Green troops. Green troops. They had this heavily fortified. Now, Normandy was a country largely agricultural. They had the most cattle. And the biggest horses, they're what they call the Belgian draft horse. They were humongous. They had feet that big.
They're like the Clydesdales in the
Right.
Budweiser.
They were beautiful animals, but the bigger majority of them were killed. When the airplanes came over, they dropped bombs. The troops came in, the artillery. The artillery exploded. They were killed by concussion. I mean, if you're that close to the ground, concussion. All the streams were polluted. You couldn't drink that water. If you drank any water, you had to put a whole handful of chlorine tablets in it. Nobody could tolerate it. But in 4 days of fighting, we lost heavily. We lost so much that we became ineffective, and we had to receive new troops that had no experience. And that fell my lot, since I, at one time, in my training, had been a scout. They said, well, since you've had all that good training, you are going to be the patrol sergeant. Now, I enjoyed that tremendously. These were hedgerows. The farmers, this man owned this property. He had 3 sons. When each one married, number one, this is your property. First thing he did, fill that big hedgerow. Fence, that's mine, this is mine. Don't put your cows over here. You keep your cows over there, this is mine. Okay, right here was the road, which was they used for farm supplies, which the Germans used for transporting ammunition, food, fresh replacements. This was a sunken road, way down in the earth, probably started by Napoleon Bonaparte hundreds of years ago. They used it for farming purposes. I would draw my horse and my wagon, and the French didn't use four-wheel wagons. They used two-wheel carts. And they lined their stock up in single fashion. In the United States, you lined them up in fours. They didn't say, get out, or whoa. They said, shh, shh. But we hated those sunken roads. They were always dark. They were completely covered over by trees. And if you got caught in that road, in that position, by an artillery barrage, your goose was cooked. Because it had nowhere to go except right there.
Yeah, you had the
So-
stone walls and trees on either side, so you couldn't get out. You were
couldn't.
just
There was
stuck.
no
It's like
way.
being in the hallway out here. You
Now
just,
this road right up here would be covered by machine gun fire. The Germans would use mortars. A mortar is a tube like that. It sits on a metal base. Take a shell. It's a very effective weapon. It makes no noise. So you're dead before you hear anything.
yeah, they saw it on the video yesterday. It's a tube and you drop the shell
Yeah,
in
you drop the
and
shell
it
and
pops out.
you go-
Remember?
It made no loud noise.
Right.
You fire a rifle, you can hear it 5 miles. I hated those mortars because the Japanese had a mortar that were called knee mortars. They didn't have a base, and they were very good. They take that thing and stick it in the ground, and they could pick it up and run over here. Ours had a big metal base. And would you know, the man in that mortar section was one of the smallest men, and when we moved position, and the other little fella, carried the ammunition. It was terrible. I felt so sorry for those guys. You know, I never had thought of that.
Yeah.
And we made this long advance one day, and I was strolling along there, you know, with my pants legs hanging out, shirt tail too, on mine. But I run up on that little guy, and he had that mortar base slung on the strap across his back, and he was something like this. I mean, when you have no rest, you have no food, and you've got to walk a long way, and it's hot, and you carry that thing. Then across from the other fellow had the barrel on his shoulder, and then the third man had the ammunition. He had a jacket with slots in it, and he hung those 60 millimeter shells on it. They were wonderful weapons.
How big were the shells?
Well, now there were two different sizes of mortars. The 60 millimeter mortar was about that, and the shell would be about that long. Now, missiles,
They look like big bullets.
a missile, it looks like this. It looks like this, except this would be the warhead, and it comes up just like, it looks just like a bullet, really. Looks just like a bullet. It has a rounded, offset nose, and, but
So you could only carry like a few at a time, right?
you carried about 8. But there was 2 mortar sections to a rifle coming. And you had another fellow carrying it. Our mortar man, mortar section leader, on the very first day of combat, I saw that guy. He had his rifle. You see, he had the target. He had the target, where fire so-and-so, where fire so-and-so. He had a rifle in his hand and a piece of shrapnel had hit that in his hand like that, and he couldn't turn it loose. His hand was frozen. Didn't have a scratch on it, but it froze all those. You can imagine what a piece of hot shrapnel. A shrapnel is a piece of a warhead, you see. And it hit that hand, and it was just like that. He couldn't turn it loose. He couldn't move it. And they fired about 3 rounds, I think, and the Germans picked up on that right away. Same way with the machine guns. We had no mortar section after the first day until we got some new replacements. But they were very effective. Now the Germans had a field piece, but everybody hated it, called it 88. American artillery were very good, fired at an angle. They couldn't fire this way, and they couldn't fire that way. They fired at an angle. The German 88 was a field piece on wheels. They could fire it straight up. They could fire it straight like a rifle. They could fire it in the ground. And it was a very high projectile. When it left that barrel, it screamed. And you could hear it coming. And they told me, I never got hit. They told me, if you hear it, don't worry about it. It's either going over, it's going to fall short. If you don't hear it, you're dead. And they were very good. They were very good. They'd fire at airplanes, they'd fire at tanks, they would fire at infantry. Our artillery pieces fired at men on them. Of course, they could fire at tanks because they had a forward observer that targeted. They call in, they have a grid map, A, B, C, D, A10, A11, B14, fire for effect. We fire this out. Here's the target. Fire around here and around here and around here. That's what they call a bracket. We've got the target bracketed. Fire for effect. Bam! Right in the center. And they were the salvation of the infantry, the artillery, and the Air Force. The Air Force, P-47s, P-38s, P-51 were the greatest support planes in the world. And they were there every day the sun shined. You'd be sitting there and one of those boogers come up. There'd be another one sitting right up here. When this one went down, I was sitting on the hill one day on a little knoll, and they two of them come over. Okay, he spotted his objective, and this one, his wing, they call him wingman.
Right.
This fellow started down, and I was watching him. I couldn't hear him. I said, oh no. No, well, he come up 10 miles, so young, way up I heard him come. But this fella, his wingman, while he was hanging around up there, I shot him down. He came back. Tough.
Yeah.
Tough. We lost thousands of men wounded. I want to tell you what it cost. Tell you what it cost the United States. The American casualties of World War II. 1,076,245 casualties. Now these were people that were wounded. Some of them were wounded permanently. Some of them lost their legs. Some of them lost their arms. Some of them lost their eyesight. Dead. 405,000. 399 listed as dead.
I thought about that, and I wanted to put it in perspective. We don't have 400,000 people in Montgomery. That's more than the people that are in Montgomery dead.
Listen to this. What it was in the States finance war, $330 billion, which came to $250 million daily. Every man and woman served. You said, but in that period, you said, they didn't say you could get out in 6 months. You are here for the duration. That means to the end. They fought bravely. We're brave men. They gave their lives unselfishly. People would walk to me and say, Sergeant, if you want someone to help you, call me. Young man, the first man killed out of our group was the man that replaced me as first scout. He lived about 30 minutes. That, except for the grace of God, has been me. Wonderful when you hear the Star Spangled Banner and that flag rolls by you. You think of all these men, 405,000 that gave their lives, that you can call Bill Clinton a liar. You can call the Supreme Court a bunch of jugheads. You can call Elmer Farmer anything you want to. You can call Don Siegelman anything you want to. You can go to the church of your choice and you can worship your Lord and your Savior without any interference. For they gave their lives for this purpose. That this country would remain free. Anybody want to ask a question?
There. Okay. Chris wants one.
Is the big ship that you first started off to, you know, that German boat, is it still here?
I would say that it's in scrap. Because it, you know, it has some age on it. It may be in the mothball. You know, the mothball was the biggest part of the Navy after World War II. I mean, they just pull them up and keep them. We don't need them anymore. Well, it's probably been, that was a great boat. Oh, I love that great boat. Yes, sir.
Is that your uniform right there?
That is not my uniform. I have one like that. I didn't bring mine today, but I'll tell you.
How long were you there?
I was there till I came back in January. I went in the spring of the year, and I was over there till January. I had to come back because I almost lost all the feet to exposure to, they were frostbitten. That's what saved my life. Saved my life, yes.
While you were there, did you ever see the Nazis or Hitler in person?
I didn't see Hitler, but I saw the Nazis. I was standing, let me tell you, I was standing in the woods one day, and we were just short of the German border. It was raining, pouring in the rain. You take your squad in reverse, you stay here till we need you. Okay. I had on my raincoat, my overcoat, field jacket, long handle underwear, full wool uniform, and I was froze to death. Slip my rifle up under my arm so the water wouldn't get in it. And I was standing there with my squad, and I turned around. Would you stand up, son? Would you stand up? I turned around, and there was this German soldier. I mean, I could touch him with my hand. Woo, you're talking about having a heart attack. That young man, you can sit down. Thank you. That man came that close to being dead. He was surrendered. He surrendered. But he don't know how close to meeting his maker he was. If I'd have had my gun in my normal position, he'd been a dead boy. He was only a boy. Yes.
Did you fight in D-Day?
No.
You didn't.
Came in the day after.
In the war, did y'all have, ever have to meet up with Mussolini and,
Mussolini?
and the Italians?
Mussolini? No. I'll tell you what happened. Mussolini was captured by the Italians, took prisoner by his own people, and hung. But we fought the Italians in Italy. Thank God I didn't go to Italy. Oh man, that was terrible, terrible. Our sister division, the 36th Infantry from Texas. Oh boy.
The Italian campaign was awful, but
It was
Mr. Lynn
awful.
didn't go to that. He
But-
went north.
The Italians were, at that time, were essentially out of the war. The Germans had taken over, and we had a picnic. We had a picnic in France compared to the poor people in Italy, because it was just one mountain right after the other mountain. Boy, this river, oh, it was terrible. And they were still fighting. They were still fighting in Italy when the war ended. Anybody? Yes.
What was the worst war that you've been into?
Worst war
The
or
worst
worst
battle?
battle?
The worst battle?
or
The first day. The first 2 weeks were horrible because we were not used. Let me explain this. These hedgerows, some of them are that tall, some of them are this tall, wide, thickly matted with undergrowth that they had planted in there. And instead of metal fences, metal wire, that's what they used for fences. Each one of them had a gate, and to get over this, you had to crawl over it. You didn't jump, you didn't walk over it, somebody'd shoot you. And when you got into that field, you were surrounded on that side, and you were surrounded on this side. Yes.
When y'all had airstrikes on the Germans,
Mm-hmm.
did y'all use any others besides the planes you talked about, like the A-10s and all that?
No, the A-10s were not in our arsenal. The main airplane for troops is what they call the P-47 Thunderbolt. But later on, I'll tell you how sharp Germany was. They came out with a jet airplane.
They had the first jet.
They had the first jet. They built the rocket. They came out with the V-1 and the V-2. And the V-2 was what basically the United States entered the space race out of Redstone Arsenal. That's how far advanced scientifically they were a very brilliant nation. Anybody else?
Brooke had a question. Lee, Chris has already asked a couple. Brooke, what was your
Yeah.
Do you still see your friends that you had during the war, are they still alive? Like some of the people that are they still alive?
Yes, yes. As I said, our regiment infiltrated heavily with Southern people. I had 3 men. I come from a little old town, little small town in East Tennessee. There were 3 men from that location went into my regiment. Oh, we were eat up with people from Tennessee and Alabama, Georgia. Oh yes, after the war, I went up home, and I came back to live in Alabama. I've never lived in Tennessee again. But I stopped in a little place, and I knew the man that was in my squad. So I told my wife, I said, I'm just going to pull over here and stop and see if anyone knows. He and his brother both was in my outfit. So I stopped at this market. I said, sir, I'm looking for a fellow by the name of Louis Sherman. He said he lives right behind the market. So just walk right up the street. I walked up, knocked on the door, and he was dressing for Sunday school. He opened the door and I said, how you doing, Louis? He almost fainted. He said, I've been looking for you everywhere. Yes, I had a lot of people from the South. Had a fellow from Birmingham. He got wounded. The aid men were carrying him down by the company on the leg. He said, hi guys! I got my leg shot. I'm gone. He was happy.
Yeah.
I don't blame him. I would have been too.
Brandon, you get the last
Yes.
question.
What was your worst position in the war?
Where's
The
it?
infantry. The infantry. The British called us the PBI. Oh, you poor, bloody infantry. The worst position, they were all bad, son. They were all bad. You get caught. I got left one night. My whole squad got left. I mean, they pulled out and left us. And we finally, I said, you guys lie down and rest. I'll keep the lookout. This fellow over here, when they left, they didn't come over and said, hey, Lynn, we're going. They left. Way along, way out in the midnight hour.
Tell Mr. Lynn, thank you. See y'all
Y'all
Monday.
are wonderful. Beautiful.
That's a good picture.